Welcome, everyone, to the Orchestrating Healthcare podcast. We have an awesome episode today with Chelsea Gallagher, Human Resources Manager at Lumeon, to talk about building a great culture and being a place where people love to work. Welcome to the podcast, Chelsea. Super excited to have you on.
I'm super excited to be here and thanks for having me.
Yes. And before we dive into what makes a best place to work, what
Yeah.
some of that looks like, let's first define it. What does being a best place to work really mean to you?
Yeah. It's a little bit of a loaded question, to be honest, because I feel like it's difficult to narrow down a true list. And
Yeah.
my definitions of a great place to work could be very different than someone else's. But I'll kind of talk you through what I would say are my kind of top few attributes of what makes a company a best place to work. The first is a strong company culture, right? So something that is well defined, positive, and fun. And it needs to align with our company values and our goals. So making sure there's that clear mission, that set of values that employees really kind of embrace and live by. The next, from my opinion, be supportive leadership, right? So you really want
Mhm.
leaders that are both effective and approachable. Someone that's able to provide that really clear direction, that mentorship, and be supportive to their teams. Where I would say they're able to kind of promote that trust and have a sense of empowerment amongst their teams. Um, I'd say my only other two that I'll call out here, because again, I can go on and on, are one, opportunities for growth. So making sure that a company stays committed to employee development from a training and education perspective, having those promotional opportunities available, and really just making sure that employees feel like their personal and professional growth is valued. And the last thing is diversity, equity, and inclusion. Obviously, pretty self explanatory. But the more we're able to have kind of diversity in terms of backgrounds, the more perspectives that we have, and the more we're able to offer those diverse experiences to better the organization. So, kind of a long list, hard to answer with just one or two things, but I even narrowed that down quite a bit.
Yes, and what I love that you talked about was the vulnerability and, like, trust. Just the other
Correct.
day, in one of our marketing channels, I made, kinda like a mistake or
Yeah,
whatnot, and but we had that space enough where I could be like, "Hey, guys, sorry, like, I was the one that made that mistake, like, that's on
totally.
me, like, I'll fix it." But you need a culture that, is trustworthy, that you can be vulnerable in for those interactions to happen.
Totally agree. Yeah. We're the kings and queens of doing that on HR. I mean, I sent out
Yeah.
the end of year party for the UK in my time zone instead of in British
Mhm.
time. And so they were gonna have an all-night party, which was gonna go fantastically.
Yeah.
Trying to fix that. So I'm with you. People are like, why does this run from 6 p.m. to 6 in the morning? I was like, don't worry about it. We'll fix it.
Well, that goes back to what you're talking about, building a fun culture,
That's
but
right. That's right. That's the right I make for it.
well, let's talk
Oh,
about those. Yeah, let's talk about those attributes a little bit more in depth. Are there ones that speak to you more that you see here at Lumeon? Like one or two of those that like really
yeah.
stand out here?
Totally. I'd say the first is we do have a great culture, right? We have, I think, being with a smaller company, you kind of innately have more opportunities to collaborate. The teamwork is amazing. You're able to work across departments, across time zones, across countries. And I think we're really intentional about always coming back to
Yeah.
our values, making sure that we're aligned with our vision. And I'd say our exec leaders really do care about our people. And again, that's not always something you find at organizations. One thing that really stood out to me when I joined Lumion is every single member of the ELT meets with every single new hire one
Hmm.
on one. And that is like unheard of. But they really want to take that 30 minutes, get to know you, have an opportunity to kind of get to know you, not just in terms of your professional background, but you as a human. And so again,
Yeah.
they're kind of setting that foundation from day one that they're approachable, that they want to hear you. So that again kind of cascades down into leaders, to managers, and then to employees. So yeah, I would say those are my top two things that I really celebrate about being at Lumion.
Yeah, the executive team here, like, is so approachable. Like, you could really go to like anybody on the executive
Yeah.
team. Like Matt, like I was just collaborating with him,
Yeah.
Matt Duffy, our chief product officer, who you guys heard on here before. But like, I just went to him for like fixing something with like conductor, and so it's just there's not a lot of egos here, and that even goes all the way up to the executive team where you can collaborate with
Correct.
them.
Yeah, not rank and file at all, which again, I really appreciate. I feel like people have a voice here. And so it doesn't matter if you're an entry level or you've been here 15 years, you're really treated the same in terms of, oh, you have an idea. We'd love to hear it. May or may not be implemented, but you always have a seat at the table, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, me as well. And like you talked about, like the cross collaborations between different departments is awesome. Like I speak to a lot of people on like the product management team just about
Right.
like, oh, how are we marketing this? Or like, can you help set up this? And it is just no egos are at the door. You drop them at the door.
Yeah.
It's an environment where you can collaborate with anyone. And we are in the UK as well. You can
Yep.
collaborate with people in the UK. I love talking to people in the
Exactly.
UK.
Right, exactly. I know. I'm like, I know in the mornings I'm probably talking to folks in the UK, afternoons maybe US. It is really nice to be able to talk to people from all walks of life. So it's awesome.
Yeah, it is fun. Someone on my team, Joe, whenever I see her, she's based in the UK. I was asking like, "What's going on in
Right?
London and whatnot?" So
So
it's fun to
different.
have that. Hmm.
I love it.
Yeah, it's a good environment. And let's talk a little bit more about like Lumeon and like our core values
Yeah.
and how they're intertwined. So can you just share with like the Lumeon core values for anyone
Yeah.
listening?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have 5 core values here. And again, they really are intertwined and I would say are day to day. So the first one is we innovate. So I'd say, we have something great in our terms of our product. How do we make it better? How do we kind of focus on what got us to where we're at today? Isn't necessarily going to be what's needed to get us to the future. So we're always innovating. The next value is we care. Really, it's why Lumion exists, right? We just believe there's a better way to deliver care using data and automation. And again, our vision is obviously to empower care teams to deliver effective, efficient, high quality care individualized to every patient. So we care in terms of our vision, but we certainly care about one another. We're
Hmm.
accountable, pretty self explanatory again, but not just to each other, but also to ourselves. We are disciplined. So we use a strategic framework called the V2 Mom. There's lots of V2, or sorry, there's lots of
Hmm.
strategic frameworks out there. R stands for vision, values, methods, obstacles, and measures. And so in that, there's this concept of the flywheel. And I don't know how much you remember of this. It's probably from way back when you first
Yeah.
joined. But it's basically a metaphorical representation of how successful companies are able to
Hmm.
build that momentum over time. And so in it are these key principles within the concept in terms of having disciplined people, disciplined thought, and disciplined action. So at the end of the day,
Yeah.
kind of every decision and action we're taking has to tie back to our vision, strategy, and flywheel, which I really like. And then our fifth and last value is we collaborate or we are
Hmm.
collaborative. And again, I think we kind of already drilled this home, but with a small
Yeah.
company, you just have no shortage of opportunities to collaborate within your department and also across departments. So, yeah, those are our 5 core values.
Yeah, and I love the innovate one because someone that, like, I have type 1 diabetes and, like, I just
Right.
know, like, people that experience healthcare, it's just, like, they realize, like, how, like,
Correct.
broken it is, fragmented it is, and that's what's so cool about joining a company like Lumeon is because 'cause we're out there to really address that need.
Absolutely. Yeah. The ability to kind of give back, and it comes up on every engagement survey too. And people are like, what do you
Yeah.
like and what do you appreciate about Lumion? They're like, our product is making a difference in the marketplace, both in terms of on the provider side, but also getting down to, again, that very individualized um, part of being a patient, how complex it can be, and how many people you're working with, and scheduling and reminders and all the things. Like, our product is really helping to kind of shape and make the experience better and less administrative for everybody involved. So, I'm with you. Can't imagine what you need to go through with all your scheduling.
Yeah. Yeah, and there is definitely something to be said, to work on, like, a team and a product that, like, actually is changing people's lives. I think we talked about it on the podcast before, but it's not like we're in,
Yes.
like, fintech or anything like that.
Correct.
Like,
Correct.
we are actually impacting, like, a caregiver and also the patient. It's just so
Yep.
cool to be able to work on something like that.
Totally agree. Yes. It certainly makes your job feel more rewarding when you know that there's such a positive impact, again, in kind of the healthcare landscape. So,
Mhm.
absolutely.
And there's a ton of impact being made here. And let's talk about the impact you've experienced just being part
Yeah.
of the Lumion team. Like, what's, like, your favorite thing about the Lumion team and the culture?
Yeah. I'd say number one is just the people, right? And it's such a generic
Mhm.
answer. But I think, we're all working towards the same goal, but we're all bringing something different to the table as well, right? And myself in particular, I appreciate that I'm able to be myself here, right? I'm probably
Yeah.
not somebody that you would say is a stereotypical HR person or,
Yeah.
there tends to be like the stigma around HR. And I'm very much the same at work as I am in my personal life, right? And I
I
appreciate
love
being
that.
able to do that. And I can't always do that at other companies, right? And so I feel like because I'm able to be authentic and maybe a little bit less rigid in my approach, I'm able to kind of relate to people at all levels of the organization and be seen as that trusted advisor. So I think in general, Lumion just does a really, really nice job of celebrating folks' uniqueness and making sure that they
Yeah.
aren't expected to fit into some box, right? Um, I
Mhm.
think the other personal favorite of mine is just the work-life balance. And again, that's another thing that comes
For
up
sure.
very, very often in our engagement survey. I worked at organizations where you don't have that, where you're getting pinged on Teams or Slack at 10 p.m. And you're like, I'm trying to go to sleep now, right?
Yeah.
And I'm a mom to two young kids. I don't know if I'm going to get a call from daycare and need to run out. And at first, when I got here, I felt pretty guilty, right? Like, oh my gosh, it's the
Yeah.
middle of the day and I have to reschedule a meeting. And people are like, why are you worried about this? Like, take the time you need and we know you'll make the work up. And again, that's not something you find everywhere. So it's something for me at this season in my life that I can't be more appreciative of because again, my boss, the company trusts that I'm going to get my stuff done, even if it's not within, I'd say, core business course.
Yeah, I love that, and I will speak to that as well because, like, some of our teams in the UK, and so they're conscious of that too, and, like, when
Yeah.
I'm sending out Slack messages at 4 o'clock my
Yeah.
time, it's
Right.
10 o'clock, 11 o'clock their time, and so
Totally. Yeah.
it's just like a schedule send, and because you're conscious of their time and you want them to
Totally.
enjoy, their life outside of work because there is so much outside of work, and even with, vacations, like, people will just always have your back, and it's like, "No, like, do
Yeah.
not get on Teams, do not get
Correct.
on Slack, enjoy your vacation." So, the work-life balance here is it is top tier.
Yeah, it's unparalleled for sure. Even when I was on maternity leave, so I started here, worked a few months, and then went out on maternity leave. And I was very much like, should I check my phone? Should I check my email? My team's
Yeah,
like, do not check anything. Like, we've got it. So the fact that teams really are empowering you to take time for yourself, whether it be a mental reset, a sick day, you're off in the Bahamas with your family enjoying a trip, like they mean it. And that
yeah,
starts at the top, right? Even Robbie, our CEO, if he puts out an out of office, he says like something along the lines of, I'm out and unreachable and I will respond to when I get back. And generally he means that, right?
yeah.
And so when people lead by example, it's easy to follow suit. So yeah, can't say enough good things about the work-life balance at Lumeon.
Yeah, and that just spoke as well to, like, the executive team, like, setting the example, at the
Correct.
top. When your CEO is saying stuff like this, I mean, that trickles down to the managers,
Right.
employees, all leadership, and everyone in the company, that is so important, and we definitely experience that here at Lumeon.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah, and I do wanna talk about empowerment as well because we
Uh-huh.
have a cool little group coming up, the
Yeah.
employee resource group.
Woohoo.
Tell me a little bit more. How did this start and what is the goal
Yeah.
of it?
Yeah. So employee resource groups are great. I don't know if you've been part of them at other organizations. Thank you for being a part of ours. We're glad to have you on the team.
Yeah.
I think, shout out to Ryan. I think what maybe kind of sparked Lumion's interest in reigniting an ERG, because candidly, I think there may have been one probably prior to both of our times, Ryan, was we want there to be an avenue where employees, more like individual contributors, are able to have a voice, right? So
Yeah,
great that we have a company all hands every month. It's wonderful to hear what's going on. That's typically led by managers and above, right? More often than not, execs giving updates, which again, great forum,
yeah.
but not necessarily an opportunity to kind of offer perspective. So as a result of last year's engagement survey, there was just a lot of questions about communication and how can we kind of change things and make sure that Lumion remains a great place to work. And so a couple of things came out of that. One was we created this monthly management group. And again, that's been
Mhm.
a great forum to have managers kind of come together, have ideas, offer trainings, have them kind of have the ability to communicate messaging downwards. And then the employee resource group. So the employee resource group we kicked off last month
Mhm.
consists of 7 employees, again, from diverse backgrounds. So in terms
Yep.
of location, team, gender, ethnicity, et cetera, we really wanted to be intentional about the folks that we included, as well as myself as the chair, and then Chad Ewing, our chief customer officer, is our exec sponsor. So again, we do have a line back to the exec team. And we obviously have kind of primary goals that are associated with the group. So the first is making sure we're providing that input, advice, recommendations on
Mhm.
topics that matter to our employees, right? And that's why when we kicked off the meeting, we really wanted to hear from you all, right? What's going well? Where do you think there are areas of opportunity? Serving as thought partners, making sure we're providing that input, advice, and recommendations on things like how do we build a virtual workforce or a remote
Yeah.
first company, right? And that can be very, very difficult. Um, Providing ideas and feedback about how to increase that employee engagement. Again, I think our employees are pretty engaged, but there's always opportunity to make things even more fun or have you work with
Yeah.
folks that you don't normally work with. And then lastly, in terms of our kind of overarching goals for the group, being able to identify and assist with activity planning, events, resources in response to the annual engagement survey, which again is coming up here in about 2 weeks. So it's coming up fast and furious here. So I'm super excited to see all the group is going to accomplish. Again, I think it'll just be another opportunity for us to further enhance our culture and ensure that Lumion
Yeah.
is remaining a great place to work for our employees.
Yeah, and what I loved about that too is like it is a very diverse background in there,
Correct.
just from like age, experience. I think
Mhm.
experience was like the biggest thing. I'm 3 years
Totally.
in my working career, something like that, and you had like people
Yep.
in there that are like 20 years into it, and
Yeah,
so
right?
having that experience there is like so valuable. That diversity there is so valuable, just because you get so many different opinions, people have different approaches to it, and yeah, it's an awesome group, and I am
Yeah.
super excited to be a part of it,
Yeah.
and also.
What drew you to apply to the employee resource group?
Yeah, well, speaking back to like the people here, like I love the people here, and I just think
Yeah.
there's so many opportunities here to further enhance like what we're experiencing here at Lumion. And I feel like that's just like a great place to like really get your voice out there. And it felt like it is a community where you're able to voice your opinions. You're actually able to make changes within Lumion as you see fit. And I think it's a really good avenue for people to bring ideas to and be able to like,
Yeah.
hey, I think we should try this to make employees more happy. And so just being involved in that way is really what drew me to being part of the employee resource group.
I love it. Yeah. I think we're going to be able to make a really positive impact. And yeah, I think the group is really excited, which always makes things
Yeah,
easier when people are driven
for
and they
sure.
want to be able to kind of influence and positively impact the rest of the company. It's a really exciting thing to be part of. So again, glad you're part of the team and I'm excited to see where the group goes.
Yes, me as well. And last question for you as we
Yeah.
talk a little bit more about the future of Lumion. What are some more initiatives? We have the employee resource group, but what are some
Yep.
other initiatives that we may be seeing here in the future?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, one of the main ones for me is this career framework or career progression project. As I mentioned, in terms of one of the items that makes a company a great place to work, that career development, those career opportunities are really, really vital, right?
For
Because if
sure.
somebody doesn't get what they want here, they're going to look elsewhere, right? And we want to retain our good staff. We want to keep them here. We want them to feel engaged in what they're doing, challenged, and like they're able to meet kind of their professional goals. So we want to get that work kind of kicked back off again here in the new year. And within that, we'll kind of outline competencies by level in order to
Yeah.
make sure the expectations are clear, outline career or promotion opportunities. And again, that could be an individual path, it could be a management path. And it'll help with career mobility as well, right? So I've often worked with organizations where somebody in billing and reimbursement, for example, are like, I don't want to do that the rest of my life, right?
Yeah.
Like, I want to go over there to legal. And you're like, hey, great, there's actually a way you can get there. And so this will kind of help further enhance. There are opportunities beyond your, organizational hierarchy, if that makes sense, or within your direct career paths. We want all of that to be called out again, so that we can make sure that people are feeling fulfilled in their role, making sure that we're able to retain our staff and then they're not going out into the market to find something that we could very well have or set up internally for them. So that's the biggest project I'm excited about. A couple of the smaller ones, I certainly want to work on developing a more fruitful rewards and recognition program. Certainly, we have Perkbox, which is
Oh, yeah.
like our engagement platform. You can get yourself a little treat like a Starbucks or something once a month. I want to do a better job of standardizing. How do we celebrate things like work milestones, anniversaries,
Mhm.
or hey, my team member did a job well done, or they put in all these extra hours, or my team member just got married, they just had a baby. Like, how do we reward those people for the things outside of work potentially that again, I think right now people are doing the best that they can, but we can do something
For
really
sure.
awesome. Like I've done um branded onesies for babies, right? Like somebody has a
That'd be
baby, get a
sweet.
branded onesie. One, it's free marketing, which is fantastic. I feel like just a handwritten note goes a really long way.
For
So
sure.
again, that just kind of further enhance the culture. And one thing I think the ERG will do a really nice job of focusing on is again enhancing that remote first culture. How do we bridge the gap
Mhm.
between the US and the UK? Which again, I think is just kind of it's a divide that just happens, right? Not
Yeah.
intentionally. It is not something that we want to be there, but it's hard when you don't see people every day. So how can we kind of work to intersperse some fun or trivia? I know you have great ideas. So I'd
Yeah.
say, some bigger projects and smaller projects, but all focused on, again, making sure that our culture remains top notch.
Yes, a lot of mindful work being put into it. It's a great time to join Lumion. We got an innovative
Yeah.
product, great culture, and Chelsea, you're making great strides in it.
Oh,
So
thank you. Right. I
thank you for
appreciate
shedding
it.
light on that. Of course. Thank you for shedding light on
Absolutely.
that. And thank you for joining us today. So thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate it.